Good evening, everybody. John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to another of our Economics A-Level live streams. Massive warm welcome to you if you're joining us live. I know for many of you this is half-term week, so I hope you're having a pleasant half-term, getting yourselves ready for the upcoming exams. And a big welcome to you, of course, if you are joining us on replay. Real quick one, just before we get into tonight's live stream, a little advertising message from Tutor to You for you here. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't seen this, we are running a series of exam workshops, our grade booster workshops, which we are going to be delivering stuff live in a cinema not far away from you. But if you've not joined our grade booster courses before, do have a look at those on our website. There is an online version if you're unable to join us. We would love you to be there if you could. Nicky and I will be there delivering some of those. Good evening to Nicky, who's with me here tonight. How are you, Nicky?
I'm fine. I'm looking forward to this. Hello, everyone.
As am I. This is the third of our 2023 series, and the first two have been absolutely fantastic in terms of some of the student responses. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about taxation and public expenditure. It's quite a niche little topic, this one, and I think very, very real-world heavy tonight. So I think we're going to be looking at quite a few real-world examples and applying them to a bit of the specification stuff. So more real-world than sort of theoretical tonight. Got a little bit of theory. So again, as always, we would love you to join in by using the chat window, if you will, please. So we've got loads of questions for you, so please do tell us what you think of the answers to the questions. Quick reminder that the PowerPoint that we're going to use tonight will be available for you to download as soon as we've finished, as will a recording of this entire session. I think we're there, Nicky. Shall we get started?
Let's get cracking.
Here we go.
Okay, we're going to start with 5 multiple choice questions. Questions 1 to 4, fine. Question 5 is quite wordy, so we're just going to take our time with that. Let's start with question 1 that's in front of us. In 2021, France's government spending to GDP percentage was 56%. Whereas Germany's was 43.5. So this is about the amount the government spends as a proportion of GDP. The question is about high rates of GDP, of government spending to GDP. Let's have a look. What do you think? So Musab's already, he's flying. Look at that. Got an answer in straight away. Heptel, hello again. Nice to see you. You're in as well. So we're looking at answers coming in. It seems to be that answer A is looking very popular with you students tonight. The actual answer is indeed C. What it might indicate is that the private sector is actually not very good at doing the investment themselves. So you might need the government, the public sector, to actually step in and do the spending. So answer C here, it might indicate underproductive private sector firms and labour markets. Reducing the problems associated with crowding out would be reducing government spending. A lot of you said answer A. Remember, crowding out comes with too much government spending. So high rates of government spending to GDP would cause crowding out. Okay, let's crack on. Let's have a look at question 2. Here we've got a growing and developing economy may have significantly higher capital expenditure to current spending ratio than a developed economy. So just a very quick reminder, capital expenditure is on infrastructure, things that will generate an income in the future. So this might be hospitals, schools, free ports, rolling out broadband. Current expenditure is on day-to-day spending on salaries for nurses and teachers and pharmaceutical drugs. So let's have a look and think. If we've got high capital to current spending, so lots of answers. A's coming in. A. Evie, hello, how lovely to see you. Right, let's see. Let's have a look at question 2. We have got answer A. It's likely to be spending on infrastructure. Fantastic. I think I led you with that one a little bit, but well done indeed. That's perfect. Very fast answers. Let's have a look at number 3. After Brexit, the UK government must employ trade negotiators to establish bilateral trading agreements. So that's trading agreements between two countries. So let's have a look and see what you think the answer to question 3 is. I'm so vexed. Hi, nice to see you again. So we got some questions, some answers coming in. What do we think? Bilateral trading agreements with other nations. What is that an example? I've got a lot of answers coming up as answer D, as an example of protectionism. Now, that's not quite right. If you're going to have a bilateral trading agreement with other nations, you're likely to be agreeing with them to actually move away from trade barriers. So it's not going to be protectionism. What we're actually after, and remember the topic of this particular revision session is about public expenditure. This is an example of current expenditure. So the answer here is actually C. Toby, how lovely to see you. So Toby is correct, Heptel's correct, Shaz, Bree, well done, and Zach Miller, all right. Current expenditure. So spending on trade negotiators, it will be gone today. You pay their salaries and you won't have the money back. The Riddler, you are on fire with all your answers, finding everything easy. That's fantastic. Let's go. Question 4. The correct definition of a progressive tax is which of the following? So we've got a progressive tax. I'll let you read the answers. See if we can get some correct answers. Heptel says B. The Riddler says B. Oscar Shiman, B. Remenza, B. Oh, I think you just know this so well. You definitely know your definitions. The answer is indeed B. Well done. A progressive tax. As people or households' income increases, they pay a greater proportion of that income in tax. A progressive tax is seen as being very fair, equitable. Okay, now I did warn you ahead of question 5 is quite wordy. So let's just make sure we understand the question first of all. So which of the following is a disadvantage of using progressive taxes to redistribute income? So we're looking for a disadvantage of progressive taxes to redistribute income. I'll let you have a read. So Het's in with D. We've got Devanshi Casperstone in with D. Got lots of answers. You're very quick readers. Just Toby is coming with D. Bree with D. You're absolutely right. I am so proud of you guys getting this right, because there is what we call a red herring in there. Answer A could distract you because A is technically correct, but it doesn't answer the question. Joe, well done. Zach, well done. Answer D. Fantastic. Flying start. Well done.
Brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. Okay, we've got a slightly new type of quiz tonight. We're calling it the Emoji Quiz because we're hoping that you're going to use your emojis on the chat window, if you will, please. It's basically a true or false quiz. Basically, I'm going to give you a statement and ask you whether you think it's true or false. So I mentioned right back at the beginning, we're talking about taxation and public expenditure tonight. A lot of it's to do with the real world. So these 3 little emoji quiz questions we've got for you are very much relating to some real world examples of use of taxation and public expenditure. So all I need you to do is tell me whether you think it's true or false by typing in some emojis. If you're not quite so keen on that, you can say T or F for true or false. Oh no, we've already got some emojis turning up. Thank you very much for that. So let's just quickly look at the question as well. 45% additional rate of income tax will be abolished for the highest earners in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, literally from April 2023. Is that true? Smiley emoji. Is that false? the opposite of smiley emoji, down face, down smile, frowny emoji, whatever you want to call it. I'm having a look. It's brilliant to see these little emojis turning up, Nicky. What a different way to answer the questions. I would say the majority of them are saying that this is false. Let's have a look what our emoji thinks. Our emoji agrees with you that it is indeed false. Now, this is a really interesting one, I think, for you guys in particular. You know, you're coming up to the end of your A-level economics in literally a few weeks' time. During your period of taking A-level economics, you have seen 3 different prime ministers. What have you seen? 4 or 5 different chancellors of the exchequer. It's been an incredible period of time. So when we talk about real-world examples and things that have been going on with the government and their economic policy, you've got a lot to know about what's been going on in recent weeks and recent months. I'm sure you will remember that back in 2022 we had a very short-lived premiership of Liz Truss, an even shorter-lived chancellorship of Kwasi Kwarteng, and they came up with this mini budget way back in September, which blew everything up in terms of the UK economy and caused all sorts of problems. And one of the big ones was that they suggested they were going to get rid of the top rate, 45% additional rate of income tax. The economic theory being that the wealthiest people, if they keep more of their money, they're more likely to plough that in terms of investments and growing the economy. That was the whole philosophy behind Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's economic policy. Well done to those of you who got involved with that question. Let's try a second one now that you know what we're doing. Where dispensing is undertaken by a registered pharmacist, wordy question again, against a prescription issued by a doctor, dentist or nurse, that activity is currently 0 rated for VAT purposes. So you'll be aware of the fact that some goods, some services do not charge VAT, have a 0 rated VAT. Is a prescription one of those products or services? Let's have a look what's coming through. We're getting some smiles. Not only are we getting some smiley emojis coming through, we're getting some laughing emojis, some big broad smile emojis coming through. What a wonderful way of finding out your thoughts on this one. Let's have a look whether our emoji agrees. Our emoji definitely does agree. So it's one of those products that has a 0 rated VAT. It's one of those questions you might see crop up, particularly as like a multi-choice question, or it may be one of those things where you want to illustrate to an examiner examples of something that's 0 rated. And of course, when you look at that list of 0 rated products, including the prescription that we were talking about in the question, as an economist, you'd say to yourself, well, why are they 0 rated? What is it about those products which makes the government deliberately not charge value-added tax? And the answer to that, of course, is that they might be a public good, or they might be a merit good, or a good with very strong positive externalities, and the government wants to encourage their consumption. Okay, one more of these. Let's have a look at this last one. The biggest single forecasted expenditure for the UK central local governments in 2023 will be on state and civil service pensions, the state pension and civil service pensions. Do you think that is the biggest single forecasted expenditure for the government, or is there another one? Is there an alternative to that? So let's see what your emojis. I'm going to do this again, Nicky. I think this is a great way of finding out student answers. What are we getting in? Lots and lots of emojis, and they're very clear. It's lovely to see these. So we're getting lots of we're getting lots of frowns, I think, on this one. Lots of frowns. The Riddler's coming in with a series of different emojis. Let's have a look what our emoji says. It isn't. It's nearly. It's very, very high. So there we've got our response there. £178.5 billion the government will spend this year on pensions, which is a huge proportion. It's not the single largest expense, though. The single largest expense is healthcare. And again, as an economist, you'd want to be asking yourself, why would that be the case? Why is healthcare and pensions the highest expenditure item for a government? Is that the case case around the world? Is that something that we do a little bit differently in the UK compared to other countries? So is UK expenditure higher than it would be as a proportion of GDP compared to other countries? And if so, why would that be the case? So these real world examples, I think, do have some real good economic theory behind them that you can use in your answers to your questions. Right, brilliant. Well done for that. It was brilliant to see. Let's move on to the data lab, Nikki.
Right, this little activity, Data Lab, we're going to give you some data in a moment. It's a bar chart and there's lots and lots of information on it. So I've asked Jon, first of all, to not put the question up straight away because I want us to have a look at the data and make sure that we really understand it before we go ahead and read the question. This is a technique that you should employ on the day in your exam because too many students rush and just look at the question without looking at the data properly. So we need to make sure we look at the data, then we can look at the question, then we're going to give you the activity. So thank you, Jon. Let's have a look. So we have got a bar chart in front of us. Now, the very first thing you should always do is read the title over on the right. Indirect taxes as a percentage of disposable income for all households by quintile groups. So quintile groups is when you divide the whole population of households up into 20% sections. The lowest earners on the left, then the next higher earners, higher, top earners over on the right. So what jumps out immediately is that the lowest quintile pays a higher proportion of tax. Now, this doesn't mean that they pay more in VAT in pounds. It means that they pay more as a proportion of their income. And that's not just VAT, that's all taxes. You can see that every band is larger. Okay, now when we're ready and we've had a think about that data and we can look at that, see the bars for in each case is getting smaller and smaller as you earn more. And if you stop and think about that, that is probably true. If you've got somebody earning £1 million, then whatever they're buying is they're not going to be spending that much on alcohol or on duty or on tobacco as a proportion of that £1 million. So we would expect that kind of data. Okay, Jon, please can we have the question? Now up pops the question. We've got a timer of a minute. I'm going to set that going straight away. See you. Good luck with this question. You're about halfway. Great, time's up. So very, very quick minute there. We got some answers flooding in. Well done indeed. Heptel, well done. Rising income inequality, Gini coefficient. You can use the Gini coefficient. You'd have to show the Gini coefficient rising. Evie, well done indeed. Toby's got answers in. Bree's got. Look at these answers flooding in. So explain a consequence. What is going to be happening if we have a disproportionate burden of indirect tax? All of these answers are looking very good. Consumers are especially the lower earners have less disposable income to spend, which will lower AD and can hinder economic growth. Bree, well done indeed. One consequence from the Riddler of the burden is that higher tax payments for lower income grounds take up higher percentage of income, which can severely reduce income and keep low earners in a poverty trap. Well done indeed. We've got some super answers here. Let's have a look at the one that we have prepared earlier. So as indirect taxes are regressive, well, that's a good word to use, they increase income inequality. So well done indeed for all of you work that out. A consequence may be that lower income households are discouraged from spending, leading to reduced economic activity. And as some of you said, well done, you've gone on to relate that to lower AD. You can get in a diagram then. That's super duper. Really, really well done, because that's a complicated graph, but you've all done really well because you've actually stopped and looked at what does the graph mean? What does the data mean before you looked at the question? Super. What a great exercise.
Fantastic, Nick. Fantastic answers, Nicky. Just as you were saying, and that actually just reminds me to remind everybody that, of course, this PowerPoint presentation, including that wonderful chart, is available to download as soon as we've finished. And that's a fantastic piece of information, I think, taking into to have a look at that and being able to analyse that. Would you agree, Nicky?
Yes, definitely. Really,
Brilliant.
really useful.
Brilliant. Okay, now, next little activity for us is the bubble quiz. I can't believe that nobody out there has not seen the bubble quiz before and needs it explaining. But here we go. The bubble quiz is like a multi-choice question, 4 possible answers, but this time, any number of the answers can be correct. From none, 0, all the way through to 4. So what I need from you is what you think of the answer by typing in the letters of the correct answers that you think are correct, or none of them if you think that none of them are correct. So let's have a look at our first question. Which of the following are examples of an indirect tax? So a really nice little straightforward one to get you going with these bubble quiz questions. Basically, it's a definition question, isn't it? Do you know what an indirect tax is? Which I'm pretty sure many of you will do. And all I want you to tell me, of those 4 examples, which of them are classified then as indirect taxes. So we're already getting some answers in. We're getting A, C and D from Mohammed. Zach's doing something similar. Riddler's going something similar to that as well, A, C and D. Toby's the first person to come in with all 4. Everybody else, I think, is sticking with A, C and D. Let's have a look what our suggestions are. Well done to most of you there, absolutely. So in terms of an indirect tax, a tax directly on a good or a service, excise duty on cars, excise duty on fuel as well, and then value-added tax, which we've already chatted about in today's session. Tax on interest on savings. There is such a thing as a tax on the interest on savings, but it's classified as a direct tax because it's related to the proportion of your income. So you're allowed to earn so much money before you have any tax on the interest on your savings, and you're allowed to have so much interest on your savings before you have to start paying tax on that as well. So tax on interest on savings is classified as a direct tax. Let's try another one. Okay. So again, another sort of like definition type of question here where, do you know what regressive is? We've already talked, we had a multi-choice question before specifically about progressive taxation, and Nicky's mentioned regressive taxation when she was talking about VAT. So which of these 4? Remember, it could be none of them. So which of these 4? Again, I'm looking at the chat window. We've got lots of B and C's, lots of B's and D's. So I think B definitely is a popular one amongst our students tonight. Lots of you going with C as well. 1 or 2 of you going with D. Nobody going with A though. That's an interesting one. I'm just having a quick look at the chat window. No, nobody's gone with A. Let's have a look. Well done. It is all 3 of B, C and D. Indirect taxes, as everybody was got there, and we talked about VAT in the last question. Specific taxes on a product, so like light fuel tax, for example. Goods and services taxes as well. Inheritance taxes. Inheritance tax is a tax on a value of inheritance. So if you were to inherit an asset or inherit a certain amount of money, you're allowed so much without having to pay any tax on it, but then it's a set amount or a percentage amount on the value of an asset. So it's not classified as an indirect tax, and therefore it's not regressive. It's to do with the size of the inheritance rather than size of the income. Right, one more for us. Right, putting it all together, if you like, thinking about taxation and public expenditure in one go. Which of these 4 are causes of a budget deficit. Have a look at those four there. Which of those do you think could lead to a budget deficit? Now, quick little word of warning as people start to put their answers in here. Very, very regular mistake by lots and lots of students is to confuse the phrase budget deficit with trade deficits. They are clearly two very different things. It's easy for me to say it in the middle of a live session talking about taxation, and obviously budget deficit is relating to how much the government is spending and how much revenue it's bringing in, whereas a trade deficit is something very different and related to your macroeconomics. Now, okay, let's have a look. We're getting lots of A, C and D. So everybody, I think, are going with A, C and D. One or two going with B as well, decreasing consumer spending. Loads and loads of you going with A, C and D. Let's see, it is actually, in this case, it is all four of our answers. Not many of you were going with B, but a decrease in consumer spending will obviously decrease the amount of revenue coming into a government through VAT and other direct, indirect taxes, specific taxes. So that could also cause a budget deficit, just as the others are doing. So rising unemployment requires the government to spend more and will receive less in tax revenue. Use of fiscal stimulus to lift aggregate demand will obviously require government spending. Increased number of people drawing state pensions as well. That will increase spending, and also people on state pensions are likely to have a lower income than if they were working. Therefore, other taxations will be reduced. Okay, let's move on to devil's advocate, Nikki.
Right, in this particular exercise, what we're going to ask you to do is give a counter argument. So you know that when you're writing essays or you're writing longer answers, you must provide balance. You must provide the other side of the argument. So here we've given you an argument saying the increase in corporation tax from 19 to 25% April 23 will generate significant increase in revenue for the UK government and will allow greater spending on households during the cost of living crisis. So what we would like you to do is to come up with a however argument. What's the other side? What would create balance? What is perhaps a disadvantage of the corporation tax rising from 19% to 25% in 2 months' time? So let's have a few answers coming through. So we've got from Ishrat Alam, reduces investment as they have lower profit to invest and may cause cost push inflation. Well done. As firms transfer their cost to consumers. Oh, well done indeed. What a fantastic answer. Musrab, however, it will affect firms' incentive to invest, affecting the quality of products. Certainly in the longer term, it could well do that. It will cause large firms to leave the economy, says Toby Newsom. Well done. And it could actually encourage less firms to come to the UK, cause redundancies and unemployment. Government has to pay more in unemployment benefits, disincentivize firms to invest in new capital, meaning their prices are very high. From Evie, well done indeed. So if there's a disincentive to invest in new capital, we may not keep up with technology moves or with new technology that's being employed elsewhere around the world and end up missing out on newer markets. So well done. That's really good. We've got increasing corporation tax coming up. We've got the answer with reduced supernormal profits. Some firms may scale back planned investments and could lead to reduction in economic efficiency. So one thing to notice with our answer there is we've brought in two micro terms. Now that's absolutely fine to do that. It's using the correct economic terminology, especially if this sort of question came up in a paper 3, where you are expected to mix micro and macro together. So reduce supernormal profits and economic efficiency brought in there. What some fantastic answers there. Well done, everybody. Let's have a look at another one. So devil's advocate number 2. The government could reallocate funding away from long-term infrastructure projects such as HS2 towards increasing public sector wages in areas such as health and education, which are suffering with a lack of labour supply. So I want you to think back to those multiple choice right at the beginning and the difference between capital expenditure by the government on things that will generate an income in the future, or current spending on things like wages. So what could be a counter argument if we reallocate funds away from infrastructure and towards giving nurses and teachers a much earned pay rise? So let's see what some of your answers are coming through. What's some of the issues with moving from capital expenditure to current expenditure? So this will increase the budget deficit further as there were a high amount of people in health and education. Okay, well done for listening earlier. This in turn increases national debt. Well, it could do if the budget deficit is higher, because of course the spending, if they're going to end up spending more, but of course it might be just switching expenditure. EV leads to unsustainable development. In what way? I would like to be asking you that. What it does mean is if we're switching to current expenditure, then we don't get anything back in the future for that. We don't get any development as such. We're just spending it on today's money. Toby, HS2 will cause a shift right in the long run aggregate supply curve. Excellent, because it will increase our capacity to produce goods or to move people or freight around the country. So it would be better in the long term. You cannot look just at the short term. So remember to answer the actual question or to give the other side. You're right, Toby, but we need to actually say what the problem is with moving it, switching it to current expenditure. Casper's just catching up with the news from lunchtime. Well done.
Well done, Casper.
Simon Ishra, I would want to ask why structural unemployment increases. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that argument. Less transport available decreases mobility. Well, that's true, but the question is asking about switching from capital expenditure to current expenditure. So let's have a look and see what we've come up with. Increased spending on infrastructure in the UK, such as HS2, will allow greater mobility of labour, which in turn could help reduce long-term labour supply issues in regions such as the southeast of England. Excellent. And if we switch it to current expenditure, of course, we're not increasing the capacity of our economy for future generations. Excellent. What some fantastic answers.
Those wonderful answers, Nicky. Absolutely stunning, some of those answers. Well done to everybody. We're into our last activity before we close. So we're doing something called the connection spinner. So what we want to achieve with this one is let's have a quick look at our actual connection spinner. We're looking here at reasons, the purpose behind government spending and taxation. So here's an interesting, just a slide before we actually do the activity, might be interesting for you if you're thinking about your revision over the coming weeks. What is the purpose behind what the government is trying to do in terms of its taxation policies or its spending policies? So we've got on there sort of the core 6 things that the government's trying to do, which is promote equity, provide a safety net, try and provide a socially efficient level of public goods and merit goods, overcoming market failure, providing necessary infrastructure, that's what we were just talking about before, improving economic efficiency and competitiveness, and then to manage the level of growth of aggregate demand to meet whatever the government's macroeconomic policy objectives are. So if you're looking at a slide which may be useful for you for your revision, do download this one. Very useful. Now, what's going to happen here is I'm going to run our spinner. We're going to have a little arm spin around on the screen, and it's going to end up on one of the 6 purposes that we've just talked about there. And I want you to give me an example. So I'm asking you to apply some real world economics here to the theory, as it were, behind the purpose of spending and taxation. Now, I don't know where it's going to land up. So let's get this spinner started. So I'm looking forward to seeing your answers because I don't know what the question is going to be. So here we go. What are we starting off with? Okay, it's landed on improving economic efficiency and competitiveness. Over to you. Can you give me some real world examples of how the government have used genuine policy relating to taxation and spending to improve economic efficiency and competitiveness. Now be careful not to really talk about supply side stuff here. We're looking at spending and taxation, so we're trying to stick to the sort of demand side stuff, if you like, the fiscal side of stuff. So let's have a look what sort of responses we get in for this one. What has the government done to try and improve economic efficiency and competitiveness in terms of their taxation policies? What have we got in? So we've got, I think that says BIF there. BIF is coming with subsidies on nuclear fusion reactors. Thank you, to try and bring in a different form of energy creation, one perhaps where we don't have to rely upon the overseas governments as much. Raise corporation tax. This is Zach. Raise corporation tax, which could incentivize firms to reduce their unit costs. So raising corporation tax might be a method that the government have used. Okay, that increases international competitiveness and efficiency. I wonder whether increasing corporation tax improves international competitiveness. Zach, that's a question for you. In the mini budget, this is Evie. In the mini budget, they were trying to introduce investment zones, so spending on particular regions and particular markets to try and draw out greater output. Ishrat's gone with decreasing corporation tax. Toby, stopping subsidies on UK farmers. Okay, so if we stop subsidising a particular sector because they're ineffective or less efficient than perhaps the international competition, perhaps that's a way of driving efficiency and competitiveness. As to whether UK farmers are less competitive than abroad, that's a different matter. Right, I don't know what we're going to come up with here, so let's see what the spinner has said. A gigabit broadband for 85% of households. So there's a large amount of government spending at the moment trying to improve broadband availability in households. The aim is to try and have at least a gigabit for 85% of the households, I think by 2025. HS2 again, we've talked about that one before. Now here's an interesting one, the energy storage competition. If you've not heard of this one, look this one up after we've finished. So it's a competition that the government ran to try and get people to come up with new ways of efficiently storing energy. Battery type of coming up with new ways of having batteries that people could use. Have a look at that one. It's an interesting competition, of which there was a cash prize, as it were, or financial prize. And of course, education. What you are doing literally is meant to make the UK economy more effective. I think we'll try this one more time. Last activity of the evening. Let's have a look. What are we going to go with this time? It'll be a different one, that's all I know. It is ending up. Okay, here we go. Providing a safety net system of welfare benefits to supplement the income of the poorest in society. So if you were using this as an example in your exam, and this is a little skill that we've been trying to encourage students to do over the recent years, you would use that as an example, providing a safety net system of welfare benefits to supplement the incomes of the poorest in society. And then, give me an example. Give me an example of what the UK government is actually doing to try and give people welfare benefits to the poorest in the country. So let's see what sort of responses we get to this one. What is the government actually doing? What do you know about the UK welfare benefit system? Any thoughts? Let's have a look, see what we've got coming through. Jane, increasing universal credit. There's a phrase I was looking forward to seeing. Increasing universal credit temporarily during COVID. They did during COVID, yes. Universal credit generally. Het Patel's come in with there, as has Evie. Childcare benefits. Thank you to Biff for mentioning that one in particular. Have we got any more tax credits from Het Patel? Well done, tax credits. Any others? Welfare benefit cap. There is a benefit cap, Bree, absolutely right. So again, trying to maybe stop people being over-reliant on benefits. Job seekers allowance. Now, I think job seekers allowance is being phased out. I think it might still exist at certain quarters, but I think that's being phased out in favour of universal income. Universal credit, I should say. I've now realised that Evie was talking about a universal basic income. We don't have one of those in the UK, but that is certainly a potential policy going forward. Wonderful. Let's have a look what we've got here. Universal credit. We've talked about it a little bit about tax bands, and we know that the UK has that higher one at 40% for incomes above 50%. They also have that 45% one, which we mentioned before, for incomes above 150. Wow. Some fantastic answers, some brilliant answers tonight. What a wonderful evening, Nikki. Haven't we had a good evening
Fantastic.
in terms of... Now,
It's been good.
as always, I get to this stage and I need to do a few shout outs. We've been so good tonight. I've got so many names, as has been the case over the last couple of weeks. I know I won't have gotten more. Massive apologies. But here we go. We had Musab, who I think was the first person to answer tonight. We had Het Patel, Ramenza, Ishrat, The Riddler. I love some of these names. Shiman, Toby, Noah, Shaz, Javanshi, Zach, Jane, Casper. I'm so vexed. A returning name, Bertie, Evie, Bree. Hope we've got that one right. Zach, Empire Defence. Hamid, Muchi Gaming, which I thought was an interesting one. And then Beth was coming in towards the end as well. Thank you all for getting involved, and thank you for giving some wonderful answers, particularly to those ones which required sort of like extensive writing. That was really good, and I really enjoyed the emoji quiz tonight. I don't know about you, Nikki. Brilliant stuff. Now, quick reminder to you all that there are a couple more revision blasts during the day over the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday. Have a look on the Tutor website. Jeff is running a couple of revision blasts for those of you who are on half term, and we're back next week. Same time next week, 6:30 on a Wednesday. Next week we will be talking about European economics. Now there's a very niche topic for you to get your head around. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. Big thank you to Nikki. Thank you for getting involved as always, Nikki. Wonderful stuff. Thank you again to everybody who's given their answers. Don't forget the download of the PowerPoint, which is coming up in the next minute, and you can always rewatch this video. Please do give us a little thumbs up if you can in the YouTube window, if you're still on YouTube, if you're looking at it in YouTube. That helps us in terms of attracting a few more people in to watch these things. Brilliant stuff. We'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Good luck. Bye-bye. See you soon.